Island Air Force, and he has to be in Pensacola, Florida in February of next year.
And
we just have one daughter, we have two grandsons, young, and then we have another one on the way with our daughter. And that was really, that's really, challenging as a family because, everybody's like, we're just gonna leave.
okay,
Yeah.
you were currently live on Facebook and YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I probably shouldn't be wrangling about that, so.
I need to move
Yeah.
up?
No, you're fine, you're fine. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Not quite, we're just live on Facebook.
Yep,
Right.
Facebook and YouTube.
Welcome to Facebook.
Mhm.
All right, well, welcome, Facebook. We're working on our technology. Give us about 30 seconds here. Of course, we, like everybody, find something that works perfectly, and then we try to improve it, and unquestionably tend to make it harder. But if you're okay, by the way, while you're working now, can I actually jump into the session?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everyone. Facebook apparently, and
YouTube.
So if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, thank you very much. For the people who will be joining us eventually on our video archive, thank you as well, because that comes off of the digital and the camera. John and I are going to pull an audible today. Generally, we start the sessions with current event news, sales current events, what's happening out in the world. You know what, I almost, maybe subconsciously, I'm looking for a reason not to say it because it's kind of like one dumpster fire to another. But Sam and I were talking before we started class, and he was sharing some things with me, and we have a training protocol that I think might be helpful as you understand. And what we were talking about is the need to go someplace else for more opportunity. The idea that wherever you are on the face of the earth, there's not enough of whatever you do in order to keep you there. Now, could there potentially legitimately be places? Absolutely. But for the most part, if you're in any kind of a major market, and if I say major market, 500,000 people? Quarter million people?
500,000.
500,000, quarter million, that's a major market. Realize that to get over 1 million people in a city is a big deal, right? So most cities aren't these, million, 2 million, 3 million. I came just outside the Detroit area. Most people don't have. Now we're here in Tucson. Well, of course, Phoenix is the big city, right? That's the basis population. But we at 1 million people, Tucson is a really, really big place. So we're going to talk a little bit about understanding your market, and then we'll jump into our individual sessions. So I want to start with this, okay? And if you'd be kind enough, Sam, I'm going to ask you to play along with me. And you can't see Sam's over here. So Sam, we were probably talking about flooring. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay, so Sam is a flooring professional, tile, carpet, linoleum.
Linoleum.
Right, shows you how old we are, right? I still call it linoleum, right? I don't know what the hell, vinyl. But, and I'm going to make a blanket statement. Sam, this circle represents all of the business doing what you do in the Tucson area. How much do you think that would be? How much business do you think there is in Tucson for all flooring contracting? Right? Now, I don't think you sell the carpet, you just install.
No, I just
okay. So how much business would there be in carpet installation, tile installation, carpet and tile repair? What else would be, John?
There's quite a bit.
$100 million? $50 million?
Money-wise?
Yeah, money-wise. 50 million?
That I don't know.
All right, well, if you had to take a guess. I mean, we're all smart guys, right? We could take a look and say,
Just the Tucson area?
yeah, just the Tucson and surrounding areas.
Oh, it's gotta be at least.
10 million?
I would say upwards of 40 to 50 million.
40 to 50 million. Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So what Sam has said is this circle represents all of the flooring installation business in Tucson. Installing tile, and repairing tile, installing carpet. And Sam's indicated that he believes it's about $50 million. Which, by the way, is probably a pretty good representation, right? $50 million. And that's through the course of a year. Now, Sam, I'm not going to ask you how much you make. But here's what I am going to do. On this graph, I'm going to put the visual representation of your portion of that. All right? And Sam, this is probably the graphic representation of your portion of that. Would you say that's probably pretty close? I'm not a good, it's probably smaller, right? Yeah. I just showed, I got a thick marker here. What you can't see is Sam's actually saying it's less than that. But here's the point. I'm going a long way to make a point. But here's what I'm saying. The conversation that Sam and I had earlier is that he was considering potentially leaving the Tucson area, going into a major market because he thought there was much more opportunity. In reality, in a $50 million market, this is his little sliver of the world. Even here, he has all this left to go. So we don't have to leave to find more business. We have to figure out a way to take the business that's here already, right? It would be different, like for example, if the market was 50 million and Sam said, well, our sales last year were 48.5 million. Then I'd say it probably makes sense to leave, right? You pretty much maxed out the market here. Now, we all have a version of this, and when I talk to people that are interested in growing their business, their position is, well, I'm going to open up a business here, I'm going to open up a branch down the road, or 20 miles away, or 50 miles, or 100 miles away. My answer is always the same. Have you fully exploited your backyard? Which meant, are you marketing in every opportunity? Are you marketing to every target? Are you being visible in all the critical areas? And if the answer is yes, then I'm totally fine with you moving. But I find that when we kind of autopsy these things going back, we don't find that. So Sam, in your unique situation, since we were talking about possibly you going to Denver under the auspices of more opportunity, this visual basically says if the market is 50 million here, yours is some little seemingly modest slice of the 50 million. You still have a lot of millions to go before you've fully exhausted the area. So, and I thank, by the way, for playing along with me, because I see that a lot in people, because it's almost like, so what was it, Joe, was it the grass is greener? The grass is greener, I think it's like on the other side of the fence or something like that. And that's the perception, that there's something better elsewhere. And if we go to the elsewhere, then we're going to have all these great opportunities. The reality is most people don't even exploit their own backyard. Now, although I'm saying backyard figuratively, I legitimately mean backyard. So for example, I want you to dominate the area within 5 miles of wherever you live or wherever your office is. It's been my experience in most major markets, if you're right here and you draw that 5-mile circle in every direction, then there's more business than you can handle just in this 5-mile circle. You can be rich beyond your wildest means if you just fully exploit the area in your own backyard. That you vacuum up every opportunity, that you get the lion's share of the jobs. And frequently I will tell people when you're marketing, I want you to market into your own backyard. It doesn't make any sense to market 20 miles away, because then you kind of bounce from one side to the other, to the other, to the other. And nowadays, when gas is what, $4.51 a gallon, you're probably going to want to minimize the time you're driving unnecessarily. But if you fully exploit your own backyard, right, and you're only 5 miles in every direction, well, think about that. I don't know, I'm sure this is a calculation of how many square miles that is and all. But I will tell you that if you exploit your own backyard, you'll make more money than you know what to do with. So that being said, sorry about that, Mr. Wechter. I didn't mean to jump on our sales current events for our watchers and
That's
listeners.
perfectly fine. Just give me 1 second.
No, not a problem. As we do talk about, there is one thing I do want to mention in terms of the sales current events. And I encourage every one of our listeners, certainly all of our clients here from John and I, you have to be a student of economics, because economics is a very predictable science, but as much of it is art, but a lot of it is science. And when you start to see certain things happen, and then you start to realize that the Fed has certain remedies and tools and techniques they can use to adjust interest rates and inflation and all the things that you're going to be facing. So if you're a student, which I hope that you are, of economics, I really encourage you to invest some time looking into it, understanding the terminology. I think a lot of people think that what happens in the world or what happens on Wall Street doesn't affect them because they don't own any stocks.
Mistake.
Yeah, not anymore. Not anymore. We live in this global national world where everything that happens affects everyone, whether it increases the cost of gas or the price of eggs. We have a client of ours that's a cattle ranch, and their cost of fertilizer and feed has gone up 300%. 300%.
And 22% of the fields in the Midwest are, there's 78% still unplowed and
Oh, yeah.
unplanted because of weather.
Yeah.
So the food shortage is very real.
Yes.
And don't forget retirement accounts. Retirement accounts,
Absolutely, they get hit too.
inflation and the Fed policies are tanking the stock market.
Yeah.
And the retirement accounts are dropping in value big time.
Yeah. I have a grandson who's gonna be 2 in August, and I have another one that's gonna be 1 at the end of July. And the younger one is still in formula, but I also have a daughter that's 4 months pregnant. So all of this baby food supply and those types of things that people are struggling to get, it becomes a real issue. So again, I don't want you to think what happens on Wall Street doesn't affect you. It absolutely does.
Yes, it does.
Interest rates, maybe if you're not buying a house, you're not buying a car, maybe you don't use credit cards, but the perception is, well, interest rates don't affect me. The drawback is that everyone that supplies to you does use those things and does have bank loans and, you know, those types of things that would be affected by it. So, Mr. Wecker, what are you going to regale us with today?
We're going to give the 2022 update to Sam Walton's 10 rules of creating a business.
I love that. Keep in mind, by the way, I always love the Sam Walton story, right? You know, this guy wasn't, a Harvard MBA.
Right.
You know, he was, the creator of the largest organization on the earth.
Yeah.
Was essentially just I don't think you even graduated from college.
Right.
It just shows you. You know, that's what it is. I'm going to do moments that matter. We did a sniglet version of a couple of these in the past, and we talked about attitude, behavior, and technique sessions. I'm going to be doing moments that matter, and that's going to be very much an attitude session. So, Mr. Becker,
All right.
you have the con. I'm going to slide myself right here in the front row
We got it.
so I can hang on every word.
All right, so we're going to do, we're just going to, I hope I'm in camera and not too far off the pan. So that, but one of the things that when you're starting to create a small business, or you're starting to toy with the idea of owning your own business for whatever reason, whether it be dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs personally, or you've got certain other issues that make your job pretty much difficult to complete on and stay happy with. Doesn't matter, there's 100 other reasons why, but there are basically 10 that Sam Walton identified a long time ago, and we're gonna put the 2022 spin on those. But first, we'll just do all 10 real quickly, and then we'll jump back in some of the details. Number one is you gotta commit to your business. Number two, you gotta share your profits when they start to develop. You gotta remember the people that help you all along the way. You've gotta motivate your partners. You've got to communicate everything that you can to all your partners. You know, the level of communication is critical. You have to appreciate everything everybody's doing for you and remind them of that. You have to celebrate your success and listen to everyone in your company. Nobody in your organization or nobody in your situation has things to say that never matters. They all matter, so you got to pay attention to that. You've got to exceed your customers' expectations when you engage with them. Give them more than what you want. You got to basically, and now this is really important as well, and this is something that Walmart always has done, control your expenses. Make sure you know where every penny is gone, and then you've got to be very uninhibited in your capacity to swim upstream. Swimming upstream, being a contradictory soul in your business, in your industry, is critical. So let's just go ahead and start with committing to your business. When you start a business, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in what you're doing. You have to believe in what you're doing is not only going to benefit you, but it's going to benefit the others that help you. It's going to benefit your community. It's gonna provide something that currently isn't there. So you have to love what you work, you have to bring the passion all the time. You have to basically make sure that that type of attitude gets permeated throughout every person, every company, every organization that you deal with. Because even though it is entrepreneur and sometimes in the initial stages solopreneur, there's going to always be other stakeholders. There's going to be a spouse involved. There's going to be kids that are going to help. There's going to be friends and neighbors and brothers and sisters. There's going to be vendors that, because you're going to have to, if you're manufacturing something, you're going to have quality packagers. You're going to have quality graphics people. You're going to have to get involved with a team. You're going to have to basically formulate a team that's going to help you, because you'll never get it done on your own. But you cannot get any of that done and any of those relationships engaged until you commit to your business, first and foremost. You have to believe in it more than anybody else. And this is something that that maybe has always been there, but I'm going to elaborate it on a different way. You may have to have a quit policy. What is a quit policy? A quit policy is somebody that is always telling you you're crazy, or always saying you don't have what it takes to happen. You gotta look at your network and find those negative people that are going to prevent you from realizing your commitment or doing your commitment, and you just may have to push them aside, at least temporarily, and not let them in your world, because that will turn your commitment into a toxic situation. And guess what? If you listen to that negativity too much, or in some situations at all, you're just not going to get off the dime. You're just not going to get it done. You're not going to allow your commitment to come to fruition and unfold and just be there for with the passion that would rub off on all the positive people that are in your life. Positive people see negative things really, really quickly, and they shake their head really, really quickly. So just make sure that if you've got negative people in your inner circle, that you've got to have a very good heart-to-heart with them, that I'm not going to tolerate your negativity, and if your negativity doesn't turn into some positivity, well, then we've got a problem, and you're just going to have to be able to implement or execute that problem. So committing to your business is really, really important. You know, Sam, you were mentioned to it a little bit. We were talking earlier, and you heard a story of the person. There's three types of people, right? People that walk to the cliff and then walk back. You know, there's the people that walk to the cliff and peek over and ponder and walk back. And then there's people that go to the cliff and just jump because they're totally committed. So keep in mind, when you go to the cliff and walk back, you're just walking back into the exact same problem that's making a person or a situation, you know, not livable. So committing to your business is first and foremost. You have to share everything. You have to benefit in any way you can all the people around you. Now, you know, in a very black and white sense, that's profits, right? You gotta obviously take care of yourself. You gotta make enough money for yourself, because, you know, the age-old rule, you gotta take care of number one first before you can take care of anybody else, you know. And if you want a popular example of that, when the masks come down on an airline, they say put your mask on first and then deal with your children or your other person next. You got to take care of number one first. But once you've done that, you have to realize of all the good things that are happening to you and share those benefits, share those things that you know you've been blessed with. Now that could be some money. Yes, you might be making more than you need, and you don't give away everything, of course. but you do keep people engaged in your work, engaged in your passion, engaged in what you do through sharing. And so, you can share anything. If you make products, you can share the products that you make because you'll share them at cost or at a significant discount. If you share, you have things that you can share with the community. So if you have things that offer the community things, it's really important to make sure the community knows that you're sharing with them all the things that you bring to the community, so that so that when you really do have a good sharing program, you'll be very, very surprised the wild expectations that start falling your way. It's just going to be really, really marvelous to see once you bring the passion, once you bring the commitment, once you bring that sharing attitude, that you're not the only one in the world. You take care of number one first, but you have to start taking care of others. So if you share with everybody, guess what? They will share with you back. And you will collectively end up making more than your wildest dreams because, you'll be in an environment, a world of sharing, and when you need help, when things come to us, a certain situation where you need some help, or you need some assistance, or you need this, that, or the other, your network, your people, your team will be there for you. So sharing is really, really important. Number 3 is motivate your partners. And your partners is a pretty wide swath when you go to define them. Your partners are really your employees, and if you start out, you may not have employees, but your partners are everybody else that helps you get going, helps you rent your space if you have to rent a space. It helps you understand how to package goods and how to get the things delivered and how to develop your brand and how to get your products made very efficiently and cost effective. It's not, money and ownership isn't really the only thing that is about motivating your partners, because you've got a lot of other ways to motivate people. And in fact, Sam, I just sent you a link to a predictive index behavioral assessment. So it takes about 6 minutes. So when you get it in front of a laptop or your desktop, don't take it on your phone. But when you get that, we will now understand your genetic drives in terms of dominance, patience, extroversion, and structure. And then once we know that, we'll be able to find what are your motivational points and how to deal with the pluses and minuses of where you would need to go, especially in your decision of Tucson or Colorado or anything along those lines. And it'll help you with the commitment to your business if you so choose to go that route. So anyway, when you motivate your partners, you have to set high goals. We just did a session on BHAG. Basically big, hairy, audacious goals, and you have to have SMART goals. You have to have achievement, which are the specific goals, which are the reachable goals, which are the achievement-oriented goals. They've got to be relevant. They've got to be measurable. They've got to be time-bound. And but then, in addition to those SMART goals, it probably makes them a good sense to have 1 or 2 very stretch goals, or what we call BHAGs. Something that it's really not reachable in most people's vision, but it just might be in yours. So you got to set high goals for you and your team. You have to encourage competition. Let people spar with one another. Let them disagree. Let them bring new ideas to the forefront, and let them just allow you to marinate all their conversations and all their thoughts and all their ideas, so that you can be the best leader you can be. And like I said, in the M for SMART goals is measurable. You gotta keep score somehow. So you gotta make sure that when you start a business, one of the ways that you can motivate people is to make them accountable. And just make sure that you've got things to measure. Now, things to measure is very easy to say, a little harder to do, but you have to make sure that when you start your business, that you create some sort of systems, whether it's an accounting system or an inventory system, or whether it's an enterprise system, or whether it's just a stack of columnar pads on a paper in the early days. But you gotta understand your metrics, and you gotta make sure everybody else understands your metrics, because guess what? People do get motivated with not just ideas, but with working hard, being measured, doing a good job, all that kind of stuff. Highly complimentary, give them kudos when they can. And another thing about motivating your employees is don't become too predictable. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later because there is a major component of that. But you know what? Keep everybody a little bit on the edge. They stay motivated that way because they just don't know, I mean, you can't be over the top weird or anything like that, but just keep things kind of lively all the time. And that'll help motivate your partners. Number 4 is communication. You have to create an environment where there is absolutely no person in your team or your partners or your employees. You have to create an environment where absolutely nobody is reluctant to come up to you and tell you the truth. Regardless if they know or they think, they perceive, or you know or you perceive that you're not, it's not going to make you happy. It doesn't really matter. You've got to have a very constructive, blame-free environment, and you also have the mechanisms that are in place that you know everything that's going on. So for instance, we did a session with a client on Wednesday, for example, all-day session Deb and I did. And we talked about customer service. And even though we didn't get, we have session 2 coming up, but even though we didn't get through that whole thing, one of the things about customer service is to make sure you have a system that every little thing that happens out in your world, every little call that comes in and has some sort of, less than stellar outcome, you've got to be able to have a system in place where it's all brought forth to you or somebody that you really, really, really trust. So you've got to have a system in place whereby there's a blame-free environment when things don't go as well as you might like them, and that will be the case. You have to absolutely take care of that problem. You have to know it. That goes back into customer expectations, and you have to make sure that as this information piles into your brain, you've got to regurgitate out back to your team to say, all of this happened, you may not know it all, you may not be aware of everything that's happened over here or over there, but you've got to have a communication mechanism back to the team to make sure that everybody on the team, every partner, every stakeholder knows the problems that we've dealt with, knows the problems the solutions, that were derived from those problems, and make sure that everybody is fully communicated with. The more they understand, the more your team understands, the more they will care about you, your business, your passion, your commitment, your well-being, your money. It'll be significantly easier if you just communicate with everybody very openly, very honestly, and make sure that they know it's really a blame-free environment, unless there's something along the lines of malintent or something more egregious than just trying to make the system work. So when we go to measurable stuff, part of that communication is making sure that you've got good systems in place that everybody can see. When I was a younger puppy, we created this document called the orderometer. And the orderometer was a daily that was published at the end of every day to say, these were the orders we got in today, this was the accumulation for the month, this is the goal, the daily goal, this is the monthly goal, and everybody in the company looked at that orderometer every morning, first thing. It was almost mandated, but everybody knew what happened the day before in terms of sales and incoming orders. And believe you me, when everybody knows it, it becomes the talk of the town. When it's the talk of the town, all of a sudden you've got execution coming on. Everybody asks, well, how can, you know, if we missed Thursday, how can we get it back on Friday? If we miss this week, what do we got to do to get it next week? The salespeople become really, really involved and motivated. If they're not getting their job done because of something in product development or engineering or customer service, or they didn't have the right sales materials, they'll be the first to bring it to the world's attention, because the orderometer, it's a funny word, but the orderometer was there for everybody to see. And you've got other types of measurements too. On the production side, you've got all your cost reductions types of reports. You've got your quality reports. You've got to have whatever you're doing in your new small business. You've got to set these systems in place so that everybody that you're dealing with understands what's going on. And nowadays, that includes your vendors, and that includes some customers, because we're all connected. We're all connected. Your big customers will want to know your entire delivery history all the time. They'll want a password to a portal in your system so they can tell if their production runs are on time. The world's changing in that regard. If you're just starting out and just committing, it's a little more sophisticated than necessary in the early days. But eventually, when you do start to achieve your big, hairy, audacious goal, you're going to have those types of issues where you're going to have to invest in systems. And so, cost reduction reports, orderometers, sales reports, performance measurements, performance benchmarks, those are going to be very, very an integral part of team communication. Number 5 is appreciate everything that everybody does for you. That's number 5. Appreciation is so big, you know, and it doesn't have to be costly. You know, your language, the way you address your team, complimenting them, you know, when they went the extra mile, hey, you tell them, you know, you let them know, you know. And if you're a promoter profile and you're a high extrovert, well, you let them know in public so other people can hear them, because that's the type of person. If you're more of an introspective type of person, they don't want to be on the dais in front of a microphone getting a plaque. They want you to walk into their office one-on-one and say, man, you knocked it out of the park this week. Do that. So you've got to know who you're dealing with on your team, what motivates them, and they will appreciate you. It doesn't have to cost. Now, it also doesn't hurt to spend a little money too, though. You know, once you have, you know, your new business on the ground, so you can start taking people out to lunch or bringing in pizza or donuts for breakfast or other healthy items. Or you can, you know, it's a little bit riskier these days than when I was growing up in business, but my mentors always made sure that we did Friday happy hour, and we would go to the local watering hole, and we would just quickly get a round of drinks and just quickly review, you know, just for 5 or 10 minutes, review the week, you know, kind of give them a little synopsis of how you felt the week was, or how they felt the week was, what needs to happen next week, and then you terminate that after 10 or 15 minutes, and you talk about family and fly fishing and geography and whatever, sports and whatever else you want to talk about. But there are a million ways to show your appreciation. You just have to make sure that you do so. Number 6 is you gotta celebrate your success. So, when something really, when you do make your numbers, whatever that benchmark would be, when you do have a stellar year, when you do have something to celebrate, you make sure you do it right. You know, a lot of people have holiday parties and things along those lines, which are all well and good. But that is also a watered down celebration because you're celebrating other things as well. You know, I'm talking about, you okay?
Yeah.
I'm talking about, the time, it's all right. I'm talking about, you know, the item specific, you know, if you had a great year and your CPA came in and audited your books or blessed off on your tax return, it's a great year, you do take your key leaders, you know, maybe out to dinner. And not in a situation that's watered down through multiple achievements or multiple external things like a holiday or whatever. You make it a direct one-on-one type of appreciation and celebration of all the things that you guys did to make it work, you know. So you can't, and you do it in a way where you become somewhat affable about it and somewhat celebratory, and you don't take yourself too seriously. It's just when you roll up your sleeves, you have some sort of celebration. A lot of people go on field trips, or a lot of people will have a bowling thing, or a golf outing, whatever it is, you know, whatever your company culture appreciates, you just dial that in and execute that. And make sure you keep not only the celebration fun, but make sure that celebration then translates back to the work environment. So when they show up for the next work week, they're in a good mood. You have fun. You tell some good, honest, clean jokes. You have fun with what you're doing. And once you create that environment of celebrating your success and bringing fun into the workplace, fun into the project system, then, you know, everybody's going to be significantly more on board. So, you know, all of this is really important stuff when it comes to appreciation. And the more fun, the more celebration, because success is something that truly should be celebrated. And again, once the party starts, then guess what? The expectations change, the expectations get better, the communication gets better, people have a really good time becoming better at what they do, creating a performance-enhancing culture, things along those lines. So celebrating is very important. And so I touched on it before in one of the other summits, but it takes its own dominant position, number 7. Listen to everyone in your company. It's very important. And we talk about it in sales training all the time, that you got to create a listening environment if you're a salesperson. So you let your prospects, you know, literally tell you their problems. So you got to, you know, we have a loose 70-30 rule where we want to make sure we listen 70% of the time, and then we help provide solutions 30% of the time, excuse me. So we have to figure out ways to get other people talking. You've got to make sure that your employees know firsthand that they can talk to you, that they can bring their family problems to you if it's affecting their work. They can bring the work problems to you if it's affecting their family. It's just an open communication, you know, blame-free environment that it's got to be really one of the pillars, if you will, of how you run your company. You know, and feel free to empower people too. Not only listen to them, but empower them. You know, give them some delegation. Give them, push down some empowerment so that they can make their own decisions and they can make their own mistakes. So one of the things that a lot of people have said over the eons of centuries is, you know, your true definitions or your true envision of success are the folks that have failed more than once, picked themselves up by their bootstraps, dusted themselves off, started anew, and you gotta allow everybody, that's a huge part of learning, and you gotta allow everybody to start to make sure that they understand that it's okay. So empower some people, make sure you've got a nice system in place of authority and responsibility and decision-making criteria and things along those lines. But give them that rope, if you will. Give them all the tools they need to make their own decisions, and it won't be too long before all those decisions will be right decisions and very few mistakes. But if they do make a mistake, okay, good. Guess what? We'll all learn from it. So listen to what your associates are trying to tell you, and once you do that, all those ideas will start to surface. Those ideas will start to bubble up like in bubbles in a champagne glass. You know, they'll just come to the top if they know that what they're going to say is not going to A, get them in trouble, B, create any demeaning or disrespect in the organization. So basically, listening to everybody in your company, having a listening environment, making sure you've got an open door policy where anybody can talk to you without repercussions. That's really key. Number 8, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier as well, exceed your customers' expectations. You know, you got to make sure not only do you give them what they want, but give them more, even if it's not in reaction to something that's less than stellar. You know, if they went out on a limb and they started doing business with your company, you know, and they were expecting X, you know, give them X plus Y. Give them more. You know, we have this mantra that we use all the time. Treat your prospects like customers and your customers like prospects. So make sure that you're always on the lookout, giving your team, your customers, your other stakeholders, your vendors, give them more all the time. And when you do that, you will, you know, they will be so impressed with your definition of their expectations, you know, that it'll just bring good things to you. When things do not go as well, you have to correct those mistakes and correct them very, very quickly. Correct them decisively, and you know, sometimes there might be an apology, sometimes there might be some sort of communication that we've changed our system because our system was really not one to handle that type of unique situation, and now we get that situation recorded, we get the solution down pat, we make sure that everybody that's relevant to that particular situation understands what the solution is so that that mistake doesn't happen again, and we just go through it. And we talk about boilerplate list, Don, remember when you were talking the other day?
Yep.
You know, you just add that situation to the boilerplate list, and so, you know, sooner or later you're just going to have multiple situations because once you have what I call a breakdown, and then you have a solution to the breakdown, all of a sudden now you've got policy. And once you've got policy, now a communicable policy, now everybody knows, you know, how to recognize the situation before it happens and what the policy is going forward. Number 9, control your expenses to beat your competition. And Sam Walton was probably one of the best in the business about doing that. He had cost controls, and I know that because I've been on the inside of Walmart as a supplier of Walmart in a couple of different industries, and I could literally go in and just see the minuscule spending that they did on their overhead, for example. And I got arm wrestled to the ground 100 different times, like on pennies, on just pennies, or free freight, or co-op advertising. You know, they were very, very good and efficient cost control experts at Walmart, and that's why this is part of his his 10 things. You know, when I walked into the healthcare industry personally, I was in the healthcare industry for 9 years. I walked into a company that never grew up from a system standpoint or from an organizational structure standpoint. And it was a big company, relatively speaking. And so we started, I immediately went, because I was not in charge of sales, I was head of operations. So what we did was increase our efficiency. And we created a purchasing system, and we created an inventory system, and we did our own arm wrestling with vendors. We did our own going off to other suppliers and asked them to make custom stuff for us that we were buying on the open market for scads about. If you don't know anything about the medical community, prices are ridiculous. It doesn't really matter if you're buying a little mirror, or if you're buying an endoscope, or if you're buying whatever. You know, if you can figure out a way to make it, or to have somebody make it like in a job shop somewhere, that will save you eons. Basically, an example is we had to pay $40,000 for an electrical coil for one of the machines that they would only last about a year, and we went to an electrical manufacturer and we had them knock it off, and so that $50,000 purchase went down to about $10,000. So that was a huge cost reduction to us, and that's when it comes to cost control. You know, we're just not sitting here saying, we got to slap our employees down and make sure they do more for less. There's 100 million ways to tackle your cost issues in a company, and you can make a lot of headway in that. You can turn an operation into a majorly efficient one. And now, in 2022. There are scads of high technology systems out there that will help you do that. There are computer-driven and online-driven and internet-driven cost systems and sourcing systems and things along those lines. So once you get to that size, you know, even if you're trying to, you know, you challenge everything, and you challenge everything all the time. You know, Don has a line that says, I always say yes. I don't always buy, but I always say yes. In other words, if somebody walks into your office and says they can beat with the price of your copy machine or your copy paper or your computers or your repairs, you know, or your health benefits or whatever it is, you just say, all right, sit over there at that desk, and here's what we do. See if you can beat it. You got 15 minutes. I'll be back and catch you later. So he'll be on his laptop, or she'll be on her laptop, and she'll be giving you a whole new health program in a matter of minutes, and you can just sit there and look at it. You don't necessarily have to buy, but you do have to welcome it because you owe it to your cost reduction team to make sure that you get that leaf overturned if indeed you're paying too much. And last but not least, number 10 is swim upstream. So what does that mean? That it means sometimes you just have to go the other way. Sometimes the industry becomes so entrenched in itself, and the latest, you know, in this particular last decade, you know, we've actually created a new phrase called the disruptor, or the disruptive industry, or, you know, so common disruptors are, you know, the iPhone and Uber and Lyft, and all kinds of other examples of disruptors. So they only get that because they've got the commitment, they've got the passion, and they've been doing all this other things. And sometimes, you know, sometimes you really do have a better mousetrap. And if you do, then you gotta have the guts and the passion to swim upstream. You have to ignore the conventional wisdom. Just because everybody else is doing it one way, that doesn't make it the best way. And if you've got an idea that can disrupt your small world, then don't allow negative people to tell you you cannot swim upstream. Disrupt the crap out of the industry if that's in your DNA. Make it part of your DNA. So in short, the 10 again, commit to your business. Share with all your partners. Motivate them in a variety of ways that you can, number 3. Number 4, communicate everything you possibly can. You can't always communicate some things like proprietary information and legal things and accounting things, that sometimes you get in a little bit of hot water with that. But if you can communicate it, you do it. Number 5, appreciate everybody in your team, all your associates, all your stakeholders. Make sure they know, once they're on board, once they feel that they are meaningful to the cause, they will just bend over backwards for you. Go ahead and when you do have a success, celebrate it immensely. And make sure everybody knows that it's being celebrated. And make the celebration single focus. We made our year, we made our month, whatever it is, make sure that you celebrate it. And listen to everybody in your company, because everybody's got a good idea. And you just have to create that listening environment to make sure it's okay. Hey, you want to tell me something? Come on in. We're good for that. Exceed your customer expectations all the time. Make sure you always go the extra mile for them, and they will honor you the next time. If you consistently do that, the next time you hit them up for a price increase, yeah, they may not be the happiest, but they know you're the best in the business, and they'll stick with you because of it. And then control your own expenses. Don't let cost creep into your world at all. Just stay very, keep your finger on the pulse of every cost on your P&L. And once you do that, you'll get to your goals, your SMART goals, significantly faster. And even if it's somewhat unconventional, but you know it's right, swim upstream. Be the contradictory element in your world, in your industry, whatever it is. Become the disruptor if that's the way. But don't take no for an answer. If it's time to swim upstream, go ahead and do it. That, my friends, are the 2022 updated 10 rules of how to become how to start your own business from Mr. Sam Wall. So
that's excellent. No, you know what? I love checklists. I think that there's something very efficient about them. You know, I've always been a fan of military operations, and there's a standard operating procedure, right? So I'm going to brush my teeth. This is the standard operating procedure by the military. You know, pick up the toothbrush, hold the toothpaste, run the water, do this. But the interesting thing about it is when you have these checklists or these reference points, it can get you back online very quickly. So thank you. That's absolutely excellent. Mine are going to be moments that matter, and this is the first time we're going to be doing this session. But it's one that's kind of a departure from some of the other things that we do. The sessions that we do, generally for John and I, fall into one of a couple of different categories. They're generally either attitude, behavior, or techniques. And I believe that that's kind of the triad of things that you have to have. All of the things that you do are predicated by a variety of different things. So, for example, the techniques are the words. I can tell you what to say. I can say, when Mrs. Jones says this, you say this. When Mr. Doe says this is how you respond. I can give you the words. I can even help you create the environment. That's the behaviors. Because we often talk in a selling situation is that you can't control who buys. You can't arm wrestle somebody to the ground and say, buy, sign it on the line. No, nothing like that. You can't control who buys, but you can control the behaviors that create a buying environment. Prospecting and development and working with your clients and communicate. You can do all of those things. Those are all absolutely 100% within your control is your behaviors. Today we're going to talk about attitude because I can give you the words. I can even give you the circumstances by which you're going to say it. What I can't do is I can't move your mouth. I can't force you to say it. And probably of all the areas, this is the one that knocks most people out. They know what to say, right? I've told them the words, right? I say, when your client says this is the time you do it. Let me give you one that straightens up the spine of people all the time. And I love this because it's kind of a trap, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's when your prospect says these words. So, Mr. Jones, why should I do business with you? Right? Why should I do business with you? Now, that seems like a very logical question, right? Why should I do business with you? And Mr. Jones, being the good salesperson that he is, goes into his justification. Well, we've been around for 20 years, and we have 50 trucks, and we have 300 employees, and we won the coveted XYZ, and we've got the Nimbus 3000. And he goes into all these justification statements that respond to the question of, Mr. Jones, why should I do business with you? The problem being is that that doesn't actually get to the heart of the question. Because the fact that you had great success with all these other people is no guarantee that you're going to have it with them. The correct answer to the question of, why should I do business with you? Is, in my opinion, maybe you shouldn't. Can I ask you a few questions? Now, when I say that to salespeople and I say that in front of groups, they're stunned. It's like I just showed them fire for the first time. Because they've spent their entire life trying to get people interested and involved and justifying why they're doing it and saying this and talking about their company. But the correct answer to why should I do business with you is maybe you shouldn't. Can I ask you a couple questions? Now, you want to talk about attitude. Now, you're not saying it in a smart-ass way. You're not saying it combative or argumentative. All you're saying is, you know what, Mrs. Jones, maybe you shouldn't. I don't have enough information right now to determine if, in fact, we are a good fit. Can I ask you a few more questions? And now, automatically, you'll find that that defensive posture of your client or prospect drops down because they're so used to having salespeople come towards them. Well, Mrs. Jones, you should buy it. It's great and it's wonderful, and if you do it. And now here I am saying, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't. I'm not only literally walking backwards, but I'm certainly vocally walking backwards as well. Maybe you should. Can I ask you a couple questions? That is an attitude statement. Right? I can tell you what to say. I can give you the circumstances by which to say it, but I can't move your mouth. And that's why everything is attitude. In professional selling, it's all about control. It's all about understanding your value proposition, understanding that not every person is a good person for you, right? There are some opportunities that really aren't worthwhile. There's some situations where I can't help. There's some situations where the prospect really doesn't want to be helped. And those are the areas that we're going to talk about today. Now, in the session Moments That Matter, what that basically says, and if you think about it, so for those that are writing notes, I always say, I will tell you what to write. If you ever have a question of what note you should take, I want you to write this note down. The next person that you may meet could change your life. You never know if the next person that you might meet might change your life. Right? Everyone who has ever gotten married or has a significant other, there was 1 second before you met that person. There was 1 second before I met my wife, Janet. There was 1 second before I met my best friend. There was 1 second before I met my first employer. I did have one job in my life when I was 16 years old at a fruit market. That was it. That was my one job. But there was 1 second before I met the person who ultimately hired me. There was 1 second before blah, 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 blah. Sometimes it's for the good, sometimes for the bad. There was 1 second before I had a car accident. Now, thankfully, I've never had a car accident. But you never know if the next person that you might meet might change your life. Now, if you were an astute salesperson, recognizing the legitimacy of that statement, then it would be in your best interest to be what? Always prepared. So you would want to certainly be presentable. So if you're at work, right, it's a work day, it's right 12:30 on a Friday, you're probably going to want to look like you're in business. If you're out in the world, you probably maybe want to carry business cards with you. That seems simple enough. Maybe you want to keep a brochure in your pocket or some kind of marketing piece in the event. Maybe you want to go to that networking event as opposed to blowing off early for the day. You have 100% control of what you do, but You have to have the attitude to do it. So moments that matter, the philosophy of moments that matter means that the next person you meet, you don't have any idea if they will change your life. And I will tell you, when you start looking at the world with this kind of magic, it's amazing what happens. You realize that your interactions become the pivotal aspect, right? You've ever been at a networking event, right? You're talking to somebody and there they are looking over your shoulder for the more important person to walk into the room? Sure, we've all done that from time to time. And yet, if you subscribe to the philosophy that every dollar that you've ever gotten in your life, you got from somebody else. Every dollar that you've ever got in your entire life, you got from somebody else. Well, it would be in your best interest to be an expert in who? Somebody else. And I kiddingly always say this, and the nice thing about it is, every day, they just show up. They're out in the world. You don't even have to invite them. They just show up. They're out there in the world. So, I want you to write that down. You never know if the next person that you may meet might change your life. The moments that matter philosophy says that your experiences have an influence on you. First of all, it happens dozens of times a day, right? Dozens of times a day. Dozens of times a day. Think of yourself as a young child. A young child, even though they've seen a tree, when they go out the next day and look at the same tree, they see it differently. Right? They look at a dog and then they realize that not every dog is the same dog. Not every bird is the same bird. And that's why that when you look at statistically that you're going to learn the vast majority of what you're going to know in your entire life by the time you're 5 years old. Now think about that. If I'm going to learn 50, 60, 70, 80% of what I'm going to know in my entire life by the time I'm 5 years old, that means everything from 5 to the day that they plant me in the ground only represents a relatively small chunk of that. All of your college and education and school and all of that kind of stuff doesn't represent all the enormous amounts of learning that take place early in your life. Your colors, your numbers, your names, your animals, all the other stuff that you suck in like a sponge. Because in their world, it is just that. It's all new. It's all magic. So the moments that matter philosophy takes a salesperson and says, I got to get that magic back in the world. I've got to get you focused on the people. And just because you've seen a tree isn't a tree. Just because you've seen a prospect that presents with the same question you heard 500 other times, it's not the same. Why? Because they're different. And yet the very jaded salespeople, in many cases the unsuccessful salespeople, they don't go into this in terms of a relationship, right? If I put on my salesperson jacket, you're going to put on your customer jacket. But if I stay Don, you're going to stay Bob. And yet so many salespeople struggle in that idea, right? They see themselves. I love when people say, what do you do? Well, I work for XYZ. Great, well that doesn't tell me what you do. That tells me where you do it at, but it doesn't tell me what you do. So the moments that matter. So I want you to write this down. First of all, happens at dozens of times a day. If you let it happen. Your second part of the moments that matter philosophy is you've got to fundamentally change the people that you come in contact with. Now I know that sounds dramatic, and Don, how are you able to do that? Now again, I believe that people have magic. I believe that you can influence how people think. And I believe that if you're good enough at it, that there is there's a physiological change that takes place with just how they feel, not the reality of something happening. Let me give you two illustrations. Illustration number one. You find out, right, you come home from work, you're dead tired, feet hurt, back hurts, it's terrible, you've got a million bills, a million problems, everything is terrible on the face of the earth. And you find out that you just won the lottery. You find out you just won the lottery. Now, do you have the money? Well, at that point, no. Do you have all your bills? Absolutely. Have they been paid? No. Are the people still going to call you and hound you? Absolutely. But how do you feel that moment?
Pretty good.
Hell yeah, but you don't have the money, right? You still have your bills, right? But I tell you, the next guy who calls you, right, that says, hey, we're coming to repossess your car, you know what we're going to say? Come get it. Keys are going to be on the dashboard, right? In fact, I'll help you drive it away. But what has really happened? Nothing has happened. Your circumstance and situation is exact until you physically get the money in your hand and you now implement that money to pay off some of your bills and do that kind of stuff, right? You meet the person of your dreams, right? The magic, the love at first sight, right? The thunderbolt that hits you. You get your new job, right? You hate your life, you hate your job, your boss is an idiot, and you get a new job. You're not going to start with it for 2 weeks. How do you feel, however, when you go back into your old workplace and tell them you're leaving? Is that 2 weeks' time that you're there burdensome and cumbersome? No! You're happy. You're leaving. You haven't left yet. If your boss is an idiot, he's still going to be an idiot to you for the next 2 weeks. And yet you fundamentally think differently about the world. That's why your attitude has such a profound effect on your ability to sell. I tell people all the time, you sell like you feel. Let me give you another illustration. Say, for example, you now just sold the biggest sale your company ever had. Right? You made, or if you're an entrepreneur, you just made the biggest sale you ever did in your life. The profit that you're going to get is enormous beyond every comparison that you're going to make. Right? The commission that you're going to make on this one sale is equal to what you would make all year. I will tell you, the next person that you talk to, the next prospect you talk to, the next customer you talk to, they will get the real you. Why? Because you're not scared and you're not desperate and you're not feeling beaten down. Right? You're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Now, you don't have the commission yet, right? You haven't. Very good chance when they sign the document, your company hasn't even got $1 yet. But how do you feel? That's why attitude is critical in sales. Because sales is hard. You're frequently alone. You're frequently talking about things that people don't want. Right? Even if your price was half as much, it's still too much. They want it for free, and they want you to pay them for it. That's in a perfect world, that's what they want. You give it to them for free, and you give them money on top of that. Of course we're not going to do that. So the moments that matter is our ability to take that magic, to create it where it doesn't necessarily exist. I believe, for example, I meet somebody new. Is that a moment that matters? Absolutely. I have no idea what effect that person is going to have on my life. Now, I'm a natural optimist, as most salespersons and business owners are. I believe every person that comes into my preview is going to do nothing but enhance my world. Right? Maybe they can help me in some way. John was very accurate. That ideology of me saying yes to everything, that's kind of my way to always make sure I get the best of everything. So if somebody comes to me and says, I sell car insurance, you know what I'm going to say? Oh my God, I have car insurance. Here, this is what I have right now. Now, I'm not even asking them to do it for less money. Right? Frequently, I would much prefer to pay the same amount but get a better policy. So if they said, listen, we could give you a policy that was twice as good and it wouldn't cost you 1 penny more, that's much more desirable to me personally than a policy that gives me 50% less for 50% less in cost. So I say yes to everything. It doesn't mean that I buy everything, but it means I say yes to everything. I say to these people, I want you to sell me something. I want you to give me a reason to buy from you. I want you to have a better mousetrap. I want you to enhance my circumstances. And two things come out of this interchange. Either A, they in fact do have a better mousetrap, which does nothing but benefit me, or B, they don't have a better mousetrap, and that confirms that what I have right now is in fact the most beneficial. But that's a very different ideology from what most people think. If you meet somebody at a networking event and they say, I sell auto insurance, what do most people say? We already have an auto insurance provider. Okay, well sure you do, right? Of course you do. You wouldn't, you didn't drive here on your bike. Pretty good chance you took the car. Let's stay on the moments that matter, by the way. When you think, and again, the people that get it will get it, and this because it's an attitude session. But I want you to make these relationships, existing relationships or new relationships, magic. These moments that matter. I believe that making a new sales contact matter. I believe that meeting someone new matters. But most people kind of throw it out. They go to the networking group, they get the business card, they have the best of intentions, right? They have the best of it. They take this business card, they got the best of intentions. And the next day they go to work, and it goes on the pile with the other 50 business cards they had the best of intentions. And then that 50 business cards goes into a rubber band, still with the best of intentions. And then it goes into the drawer, still with the best of intentions. And then the company I used to own, which was an office furniture company, when your company goes out of business, which it likely will because you don't follow up on any opportunities, and I would buy that desk from you. And I would go in your desk, and there would be all of these business cards in a rubber band that represented the best of intentions. No. No. Relationships are like an onion. There's many, many levels, and yet most people never do that. They live in a very superficial world. If you want to see if your world is superficial, look at this analogy. You have two ways in which you can have a relationship with people. One way is what we call a mile wide and an inch deep. What that means is, I know a lot of people a little bit. I know a lot of people a little bit. I kiddingly say this. I have 8,000 people that I'm connected to on Facebook. I think slightly larger on LinkedIn. 4 are going to come to my funeral. But 8,000 people know me, right? At least at one point in time, either I said yes to them, or they said yes to me in terms of a connection, right? I'm a mile wide and an inch deep. I know a lot of people a little bit. Well, that's one ideology. But if you really, really absorb this kind of moments that matter, this interpersonal relationship, the recognition that we are social creatures, and our success is on the other side of our social ability. Well, instead of being a mile wide and an inch deep, what if we were an inch wide and a mile deep? What if we really had strong relationships with less people, but far more intimately? See, because these people up here, they really don't care about you. Probably a good chance they couldn't pick you out of a lineup. Probably would never be able to identify you on the street. God forbid, they're certainly not going to hunt for you. They're certainly not going to look for business opportunities. They're certainly not going to bring you referrals. They're certainly probably not going to go out of their way in any way, shape, or form for you. But the people that are an inch wide and a mile deep, these people will hunt for you. They will bring you referrals. They will look out for your best interest. You're far more inexplicably linked to them because of the depth of your relationship. These are the people that you count on. And by the way, you don't have to have a lot of them. We suggest that you have about 16. If you have 16, you're in pretty good shape. Because if each one of those 16 people brought you 1 lead or opportunity a month, at the end of the month, you would now have 16 new opportunities, about 1 a day, give or take a couple of days. Those are the ideas of the moments that matter. It's the idea that your time, which by the way is the true wealth, so if you're writing this down, time is the true wealth. Time is the currency of love. I don't care who you are, what relationship you have. You could shower them with all the money in the world, all the possessions in the world, everything that money can buy in the world, and you know what they want? You. You. You don't think that moments matter? When my daughter was young, I could put $10,000 of unwrapped toys in a room. And I could put a refrigerator box in the other room, but I'm in that other room. Where would they go? She would go in that room with me. You got an animal? You got a dog? Tell you what, go out and buy 50 of whatever their favorite toys are and put them in an empty room. And you go in another empty room. Where's your dog going to go? Probably going to go to you. Why? Because time is the currency of love. My grandmother long since passed. And we're blessed. I'm Sicilian, so I got to see my grandparents literally every single day. Every single day. And I would say, Grandma, what do you want for Christmas? And she says, I want you to come visit me. And I say, Grandma, I see you every day. And you know what she says? It's not enough. It's not enough. Time is the currency of love. Invest time with your relationships. Invest time with your prospects. Invest time with your customers. There is no substitute. My wife is now taken to having me turn down speaking opportunities, lucrative speaking opportunities, because you know what she says? I don't want you to go. And I told her, what if I stay home, what are you going to do? What do we want to do? I'm thinking that maybe there's an event coming up that she wants us to go. She goes, I want you to sit next to me on the couch. That's it. I want you to spend... Who on their deathbed is going to say, oh my God, I wish I worked more? I'm so glad I didn't see the pyramids of Egypt. I'm so glad I didn't do all these other wonderful things that I wanted to do. Boy, I'm so glad that I missed my kids' high school play, right? Their piano recital. Boy, I'm so glad that I put in that extra 5 hours at the office when my kid hit his first and one and only home run. Moments matter. We are social creatures. Don't worry about chasing the $1 million. I will tell you the $1 million will come to you if you recognize the magic that you have with the people that are around you. And again, I know it sounds ethereal and I know it sounds dramatic, and for the people that get it, and the people that don't, they're going to struggle with it. But I want at least to get it on your radar that these contacts, the people that you know, the relationships you cultivate, and even if you've never done it your entire life, if you just start today, right this minute, the next person that you meet, try to figure out in your own mind, whatever that means, and if you struggle, you're welcome to reach out to John and I, what it would look like to maximize that relationship. Every person has 200 people that circles their universe. That means if you look at it for just the selling ability of it, that every person that I meet has 200 potential leads that they could give me of someone that may benefit from sales training and sales coaching and keynote speaking. Now, I, on the other hand, have 200 people in my world that circle my universe. Now, some have more, some have less. But now I've got 200 people that circle my universe, that if you and I now connect up, I can bring this tidal wave of connections to bear. But I'm not going to do it to this guy. I'm not going to do it to the person that is that mile wide and inch deep that I barely know, that I have no investment in, that I have no really direct connection with. I don't wish him mean stuff. I wish him great success. I'm really just not going to go out of my way to help him. This person, on the other hand, absolutely. Absolutely. Sure, that person that is an inch wide and a mile deep, that you have a far more intimate relationship with. The moments matter, and that's why, again, I come back and I did such a strong setup. This is an attitude situation. You have to be able to feel comfortable in this area of vulnerability. And that's why so many times at the beginning of a selling situation, I'll sit down even before I open anything, start talking about sales training, and I'm going to say, you know what? Tell me about you. Tell me about you. Whatever you think I should know, tell me about you. Hopes, dreams, aspirations, families, whatever it is about. How did you get here? What brought you to today? You have this enormous life experience that puts you in front of me this Friday. How'd that happen? And it's amazing the stories you'll hear, amazing the magic. You know, I believe if you took any person on the face of the earth, and you had some great actor, right? You had who's the guy that did Forrest Gump? Tom Hanks, right? If Tom Hanks played John's life, he would get an Academy Award. Not because he's a great actor, but I believe that every person, and my partner in crime, Mr. Wechter, has that great story. And yet we never get to it. We don't never hear the story because we're too willing and interested in chasing the next thing. The moments matter. You know, today is, I love the line that says, today is going to be the good old days 10 years in the future. No matter how bad your life is and how many problems you have, you're going to look back, surprisingly enough. And you're welcome to email and fight me on it. You're going to look back and this is going to be nostalgia. This is going to be the good old days. This is going to be the stuff that you reminisce about. And this is going to be the things that you wish you had back. Let me hit 2 more points here because I want to make sure we get it there. We, as people, understand that, especially in sales, that people buy emotionally. They'll justify it intellectually, but they'll buy emotionally. Right? Something about a product, a service, a circumstances, a trip, something about that hits them on an emotional level. You know, we always kiddingly say, look at the things that people buy that are so contrary to what they should have. And if you can hit on that emotional aspect, you can make that emotional connection with them, the selling part of it becomes very easy. Because now you're like mutual facilitators. We're all trying to get to the same point. You're trying to help them get there. Right? One final point, and then we'll get John back, we'll do this. You have to always take into consideration that things will change from now on. From now on, it's going to be different. From now on, it's going to be different. Now, this is probably more profound because of all things pandemic, and not just a passing statement. Now we live in a very, very different world than we did just a few years ago. But when you have the position that from today on, the world's going to be different. There was a time when we didn't have cell phones attached to our hip. Now we do. The world's very different. Right? Now there was a time where there was never a global pandemic that shut down the world. No, now there was. Now there's all the things that are happening. And to understand that the moments matter, you have to realize that when this moment is gone, it's gone. Never to be repeated again. You go into every single day with the childlike awe that allows children to get so far advanced so early in just the process of being in the world. The moments matter. If you want to be a successful salesperson, which I hope everyone within the sound of my voice is, that they realize that they're going to do that on the other side of the relationships they have, the prospects they have, the customers they have, the circumstances they have. If you invest your time and effort in those relationships, I will promise you, it will come back to you 10 times over. So, Mr. Wechter, if you will join us here as we close for the day. Now, this is the first time you've ever heard this session. What are your thoughts?
Well, number one, it's not the first time.
Well, the full session.
The full session.
Not the abbreviated parts of it.
But it's interesting, especially the last part of it.
Yes.
You know, it reminds me of a quote from Warren Buffett that said, you know, what the wise do in the beginning, the fools do in the end.
I love that. Yes.
And so really, now is the beginning. Every day that we live is the beginning. And be wise about it and make sure that you're not looking back saying, I should have, would have, could have.
Right. Well, and again, this now on things are going to be different, to me, supports the idea of I say yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? To me, and I tell my clients all the time, don't assume anything. Don't assume that, you know, that the fact that this customer's worked with you for the last 5 years, they're going to work with you tomorrow.
Right.
All of those things are gone. Every assumption is out the window. And it's interesting because now my older grandson, who's going to be 2 here shortly, now has reached a point where his level of communication is very questioning. But I also remember our daughter Cassandra when she was about 3 years old. The number one word she said more than anything was why.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, we're going to go do this. Why? Right? Sky's blue. Why? You know, this, why? And I think that the reason they learn so much is because everything that they do is questioning. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why do we advertise this way? Why do we market this way? Why do our products, you know, why are our products blue and not green? Why is this happening? And that's why, again, in this moments that matter philosophy, it's a very transitional thing. The moments matter because there's likely whatever the future is a change. Mm-hmm. It will be different. The things you're doing now will be different. The video is a great example, right? We have a standing statement that says if you don't exist on digital media, you don't exist. And now so much of the world isn't on digital anything, has no videos, no photos. It's like they're doing everything in their power to keep themselves a secret.
To resist.
Right, to resist, exactly. You know, I'm not going to do that, and, you know, I'm not going to be on social media, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm like, okay, how's that going to work? You know, how's that working out for you? Well, not very good. Why? Because the other people that recognize in the moments that matter, and today, you can't change the past. There's no guarantee of a future. The only thing you can influence is now. What am I going to do now? The fact that you were great in the past, I had one person said, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I don't feel like working 10 hours a day anymore. Well, good luck with that, right? Good luck with that, right? I hope it works out for you. I don't think it will, but I hope it works out for you. Well, we don't, frequently I'll have talk to people and say, well, what about social media? Here's what they'll say. We got a Facebook site.
Right.
We don't post anything on it, but we've got a Facebook site. We have a website. Really? Is it an active one? Do you have lots of activity? No, we got one. That's all we need. We got one. The world we live in.
Yeah, but now it's interesting, this model here of wide and very shallow versus deep. This starting now is what everyone needs to be focused on and working on.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's going to be your team.
Well, I think we've been, and again, this is another session that we're developing because kind of what's happened in the world is we've reached a critical mass. I think you're going to see it within the next year because, again, there's a lot of upheaval in people's attitudes and politics and everything. There's just a lot of unrest. And unrest generally happens because of change or flux. Now, we know it's going to happen, change or flux. And I think the best example, one of the best examples, when we were young, there were essentially 3 television channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS. Now, where I lived in Michigan, we had a public broadcasting station.
Correct.
And we could also access, just outside of Detroit, we could also access the television station that was in Windsor, right across town. So we had essentially 5. And if the president was on, you were screwed, right? Because that was it. Every channel got that. Now I have access to probably 500 channels. And I still can't find what I want. And with the advent of Netflix, and Netflix has 1,000 movies, and I still can't find something I want. And 20 pages, and I still can't find, again, all of these choices, we're going to reach a critical mass where people are going to start to realize, you know what? I don't need to be everything for everybody. I don't need to be on every place in the earth. I don't need to have all this. If I just fully exploit my backyard, right? I can be successful beyond my wildest dream. I don't have to worry about business from 5 states away. If I can just vacuum up all the business which is in my literal backyard,
Yeah.
I don't have to go 1,000,000 miles away. Why? Because there's so much business there.
You can just slide this graph right over here because they're
Absolutely.
almost one and the same.
Sure, absolutely. But again, it takes an understanding that is different than the mentality that says more is better.
Right.
More is better. So 8,000 people are better than 7,000 Facebook contacts. And 5,000 email blast is better than 4,000 email blast. The reality is the vast majority of your email blast won't even get opened. Nobody's ever going to know, but you feel good because you sent out 5,000 of them. It is what it is. The moments that matter just codifies and forces us to look at the relationships we have and live in the moment. Don't be looking over your shoulder at who's the next person. If you fully exploit just what's in front of you.
Yep.
So wherever you are today, wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening to this, the next person that comes into your preview, the next person you talk to, the next sales call you go on, how do I maximize that relationship? How do I make sure the person in front of me, who at that point in time legitimately is the most important person in the world, whether it's a family member, friend, prospect, customer, live in the moment. Because when the moment is gone, it's gone.
That can really tough phone call too.
That phone call too, sure, absolutely. Take advantage of that time. So, any parting comments, John? Mr. West, before we close up for today?
Nope, we're good. We're overtime already.
Holy crap, 31 seconds. So everyone, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer and Sales Coach. And I wish you a good time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a great weekend.